Welcome back. Just a few minutes into the show. My panel today, all of you. I don't know what is going on with you, but I thank you for spending the morning with us on Citizen Extra. We want to shift gears now to talk about NCCK's proposals in terms of expanding the executive, if you like, and formally recognizing the opposition. Let's listen to what they had to say and then we'll talk.
We recommend that Kenyans, through Parliament, amend the Constitution of Kenya 2010 to provide for A, an expansion of the executive to provide for the president to appoint a prime minister and 2 deputies as part of the executive of the winning party or coalition. The prime minister and deputy prime ministers will sit on the cabinet and may answer questions in Parliament. These positions can be ascribed other names. We hasten to add that this is an expanded executive of the winning party or coalition. It is not a nusu mkate arrangement. If coalitions are made with parties or individuals who ran for elections outside the winning party or coalition, it will be at the discretion of and under the unequivocal leadership of the elected president. B, we call for the restoration of the position of leader of the official opposition as was in the old constitution, and the creation of the position of deputy leader of official opposition in Parliament. These positions would be occupied by nominees of the political party or coalition which meets a set criteria, who may be the presidential candidate and running mate who obtain the second highest number of votes in a presidential election. This is necessary if we are to provide dignity for the opposition and an effective and facilitative mechanism of holding the government to account. Our conclusion. We conclude by calling on Kenyans to tolerate each other and purpose to live in harmony. Let us focus on what brings us together and the unique opportunities presented that make Kenya stand out in this region. As we do that, we should always bear in mind that in order not to allow politics to divide us, we must deal with each other honestly and authentically without evading our contradictions. We must seize the available opportunities to entrench our democracy and operationalize both the letter and spirit of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. God bless Kenya.
That's the General Secretary of the National Council of Churches of Kenya, Canon Peter Karanja. I want to start with you, Oliver. Samson here has argued in the previous hour that NCCK has been, quote, infiltrated by the opposition. Is that your view?
I will not say it has been infiltrated by opposition, but I will say that this is not the NCCK of the 90s, the one that brought about the Ufungamano initiative and everything. I think it has been so silent. All of a sudden, they are here with some proposals, but I'm happy we are talking as a nation. That is the first point, that we can sit down and think about our nation having problems and a way forward for this nation. But even as we seek a way forward for this nation, we must seek a way forward for this nation that is within the Constitution. We must not try to now create positions to suit the moment or the hour. What will happen is, in 2022, we'll have another problem. What will we create? A chief minister? Those are the questions we must ask ourselves. The other point is, the drafters and the framers of this Constitution are still alive with us. It was done 7 years ago. I'm not saying that our Constitution should not be amended. What I'm saying is that it is the Kenyan people, in their unanimity, who say that we want a pure presidential system. Therefore, I think trying now to come back and subvert whatever the people said 7 years ago, I think we are just trying to solve a problem in a cosmetic manner. Let us go down deep into the issue. Why are we having tensions that are periodic within every election cycle? That is the problem. But creating more positions will not solve the issue. And look at it here. The Sarah Serem-led commission has told us that Kenya is among the countries that we are overrepresented. which means creating more positions, we are putting the burden on the taxpayer. And another thing which we must look at it is that if we only come here and talk about positions, we create 3 extra positions. What impact or what effect does it have to the normal Wanjiku and Otieno in the villages? Does having a prime minister solve the problem of a Wanjiku in a village or somebody in Makueni? We need to look at the solutions we want to offer this country in the longevity of them and in carrying them to the posterity. And
I hear you in terms of fiscal cost, but there are other costs, political ones, for instance, and what the argument has been in favor of what NCCK is proposing is that can you afford to have a leader of millions outside a constitutional recognized framework? Can you afford that?
And we have a problem in this country. Whenever we legislate law or we discuss something serious, let's say even the constitution, we do it with some individuals in our minds. And that is where we are today. We are saying this constitution is either is this or that because of one thing. People who voted for this constitution voted with the mindset that the person from my tribe will be president and he will be able to tramp down the rest of the people. And the thing is this, we should not, even as we discuss the proposal by the NCCK, we should not try to individualize problems, whereby we think that when 2 leaders come down and sit, our problems are solved. I think that is, we are looking at it in a pedestrian manner. We should look at it in the manner that if we are going to have a dialogue, let us have a dialogue whereby even somebody in Suba will be able to take part, and we come up with the positions which are agreeable to everybody, not a Nairobi-based people thinking and or sitting in air conditions hotel and telling us, you know what, we need this and this to sort out their current problems. No,
I hear you, and Odoy, I want you to respond to the same issue just very shortly. But if I could just conclude with you, Oliver, following your train of thought, that argument about it being around individuals. We're creating things for individuals can also be looked at in the flip side, because this individual isn't there on his own. He's not standing there on his own. He's standing supported by millions of people. So whether you like it or not, he wields that power over millions, or millions have delegated some sort of power to him by voting for him. So it's one thing to be talking about people who get 30,000 votes being outside of some sort of formal structure that contains them. It's an entirely different kettle of fish to be talking about somebody who controls millions of people, seemingly from across the country, being outside a formal system that in itself would cause some sort of restriction, would govern the way in which they operate. Do you see that?
I think, first of all, we must agree and accept that we cannot, democracy, we must stay by the rules of democracy. We cannot, when you lose an election, we cannot massage you that come here, we give you this. No, when you entered into an election, you knew that a winner must come and a loser must come. And they say that but even in victory...
It's not massaging, and I'm not arguing for NCCK, I'm just trying to follow through your train of thought. It's not massaging the political leader. It is massaging your people, because as the executive, all these people, including the ones who didn't vote for you, are yours.
Yes, but there are 2 answers to that. When somebody loses an election in this country, the supporters should feel comfortable, because we have devolution in this country whereby people can get whatever they want, and we moved away from the big man syndrome because we wanted to create and to demystify the presidency, whereby when I have my governor in Uasin Gishu, I know there are services he can render to us, and we know that there is money there that can support the services we need. 2, when you win a government, your government is supposed to be inclusive, and it is a constitutional threshold, and that is what we should now be pushing. And we have seen, since the constitution came in place, the governments have been inclusive. We have people from all tribes, all religions and everything. That is what we need to push, not to go around the same constitution and develop other other appendages whereby when we lose an election, you are told, look here, you will be a prime minister. Yes, we respect you as our leader, because when you have 2 million people behind you, you are a leader. And that is why in national occasions, you will see the official opposition leader having a designated seat. It is just because we moved away from the Westminster model, whereby he was in parliament, he was sitting in the trenches. That is what we moved away from. But I think we must now bring our minds thought and our way of thinking to the new constitutional dispensation. We cannot think in the old order and want to act in the new constitutional dispensation.
All right, Odoy.
I think what I'm watching here about the church now coming out to tell us what should happen and what we should do about the constitution is very hypocritical. The church has always been there. The church has always been there as their complaints of election rigging. We have had Episcopal Conference, we have had NCCK, evangelical churches. They should have come together, sat down, debated about what is really wrong with this election. When NASA brought the bare minimum, they should have summoned NASA. Come, we listen to your case so that we can help you presenting it forward and say, oh, you are complaining about the election was not transparent, so you believe it was rigged. Now let's demand that it be done in a transparent way. The church kept quiet. And the reason why they have come now is because they would like peace to continue collecting. What do they collect? Those 10%. That's what they want. They want peace now. They want
tithe?
Yes, that's what they want now. But if they were really fair, they should have demanded that we have a free and fair election in Kenya. They should have recognized that the Supreme Court nullified that election, so it is irrelevant. We are going into a new one. As we go to a new one, spending 12 billion, we should have not talked about, oh, that is too much money, we can't waste. Because if we believe that the Jubilee regime is such that Kenyans don't progress economically, we definitely lose much more money under the Jubilee regime for another 5 years than sitting down to have an election which is acceptable to everyone. NASA is not accepting this election because it is not transparent. It doesn't look fair. Why does the church ignore the statements Akombe made, the statements Chebukati made, and the statement NASA is making? Why do they ignore that? They should bring these people together to see this, talk about this, and come to an agreement that, honestly, there could be something.
But they called for that. They called for those talks.
The church never called for anything.
The church
and even if they did, they never talked about it then.
It did.
In fact, they had a meeting.
It did, and I think they did.
Episcopal conference.
I think, yes, the Episcopal conference may have held some meetings. Be that as it may, you feel it's tithe seeking.
And let me tell you what is happening. The problem why the church in Kenya, the problem why the church in Kenya cannot help us today is because of the leadership of all these church groups seem to come from the Jubilee strongholds, the Episcopal Conference, CCK, and evangelical churches. That, you know who leads them. So they feel comfortable. This thing is coming home. Kenyans must learn to be Kenyans.
You think the church is in bed with the state?
Of course. They must learn to be inclusive. The problem in Kenya today...
What NCCK is proposing is something that has been strongly opposed by the state. In fact, they have labeled it a kind of...
I too would oppose it because there is nothing bringing in a prime minister who would be fired by the president if he tries to do the things that he's supposed to do. If there was a constitution having prime minister in it, that would be fine. But I don't think even NASA or Raila Odinga is interested in being a prime minister appointed by the current president that he claims did not go into office through a fair election. So I think this is a waste of time. We are wasting time. What we have to learn in this government, if they ever go ahead and be sworn in and take power, they have to learn to be inclusive. The Luos are bitter because when they look at the government that is in Kenya today, there is only one lady minister who they cannot even, they do not even know properly. So let's have an inclusive government. Let's have an inclusive government that...
That one is neither here nor there.
No. Let's have an inclusive government. There are about 250 parastatals in this country. If you want to look at the ones led by my people, the Luo, they are very few. Why? We even fear applying for government jobs because you will not be considered. As soon as the election will be over, In the back offices, they will say, oh, that name, we can't have him in government. He will leak things. He will not go with our own trends. So this is the problem. The moment the government starts being inclusive, we will not have problems of who is elected, whether it is Uhuru 10 times or Ruto 26 times, as long as we know when a government is in place, we get our part of the bargain from it.
But I think something has to be said about your reference to Rachel Omamo, who is the defense secretary.
I didn't say anything bad. I said she's the only one.
You said she's not known, and I'm just wondering whether positions like that are about being known or about their competence.
What I'm trying to tell you, back home in Kisumu, people don't even believe she's Luo.
I don't even know where to go with that. I'm just going to leave that with you. Okay. Senator, what do you think about these proposals?
First, let me say that I strongly disagree with the idea that this is about tithes. And
now, these are serious.
I want to defend the churches. I'm persuaded that they are not pursuing tithe. And even then, I want to tell my friend that Karl Marx said, religion is opium of the oppressed and the poor. So you should be very careful about criticizing religion because we are going there. Let me say this. One, yesterday I attended a ceremony, a funeral ceremony, where the priest talked about Bishop Korir. When during the 2007 clashes, they found themselves in a place where their bus was blocked somewhere in Rift Valley. And they called Bishop Korir, who came and rescued them. He actually said, all these people in this bus all belong to the seminary, and they were rescued because of his actions. The church is feeling guilty. They are feeling guilty for not doing something. So they have come out to somehow assuage their guilt by making these pronouncements. They are aware very well that some of the things that they are proposing are not going to happen, and they will not happen. Sure. There was an argument, and we must go back to the proponents of the Constitution. And I want to tell my friend that constitutions are not done in abstract. You wouldn't draft a constitution about a baby who is about to be born, who you anticipate will be born, except the clause 26 about conception. The fact is...
Now I know the problem with our panel.
The constitutions must be able to address problems of the day, even though we must think prospectively and exercise faith about something that is going to happen 20 years from now. There was a problem. And there were two protagonists in the constitutional making. The ones who are opposed to the Constitution are now in power. The ones who are for the Constitution are out of power. So, Ankiguta, you have a mismatch. The people who are opposed to this Constitution wanted a pure presidential system. And the other ones on the outside were proposing on the other side. So you have people who thought that a pure presidential system would lock out your opponents. There are people who thought that presidential system, pure parliamentary system would accommodate even the people who may have a sizable number of people who follow them and might not have the majority. The thing the tyranny of tribes. It's not the tyranny of numbers. So you sort of accommodate both this minority and minority. So even though this argument is late in terms of it's like the horse has already bolted and Canon Karanja is feeling guilty for not intervening quite early, the fact is that his proposal cannot massage the lie that we never addressed the concerns of the election. We never addressed them. We should have addressed them and much later then say, what is the way forward about what I called, and allow me to use this word, unbridled lust for power.
Wow. Is that what you think we have?
Yes. That once...
Is it on both sides?
It's everywhere. And let me explain why. What drives Ruto, William Samoei Ruto, is the fact that once Uhuru Kenyatta is out of power, it's the Kalenjin's time to eat. Somebody is seated somewhere and they have already planned 2032. And that's why they say, once this Uhuru Kenyatta finishes 10 years, this guy is going to do another 10 years. The rest of the country sits and wonders, what are you saying? Since 1963, we have only had 2 tribes leading the country. Now, what my good friend, the Jubilee analyst, was talking about is correct to the extent that this constitution was supposed to make the presidential election unattractive. So that you have Governor Joho, Governor Kibwana, Governor Kabogo, right, Governor Mwangi Wairia, being the sort of people we are looking up to in counties, so that we are not concerned that like other countries like India or Spain or Switzerland. Right. Do you know who the president of Switzerland is? No. Or Norway? Nobody cares. Right. So that the person at the executive performs such national duties. But what does Uhuru Kenyatta do? When he wants a Kisses, he calls them to State House. Once he wants a Kambas, he calls them to a section of other people. What does that do? Everybody thinks that the only way to get access to resources, and let me tell you, the only thing, what is happening in this country is access to resources. If you want a road, if you want a dam, if you want resources, if you want XYZ, what you need to do is go to
resources that are already devolved.
That are already devolved, the contradiction. And therefore you say, the reason I've defected from opposition to government is because I want development, as if the opposition are not doing development. That narrative has been created by Jubilee. And it is time to start thinking, why can't we go back to that argument that we increase the allocations to 40% of the resources, leave national government doing policies on health, as opposed to Dr. Cleofa Mailu handling everything in Nairobi. Why can't we do a policy on health across Kenya? Devolve these functions to governors, keep these guys so busy, do something about policy on maritime, do policy about how we can access fish in Kisumu, make it a good that can be available in Makueni, those things. But we don't want to do that. They say power is sweet, Ankiguta, and it's sweeter when it's concentrated.
I don't know, I have none. So.
you have power to cut me off.
I have the power to cut me off right now, which I'm just about to exercise. Okay, let's get your perspective, Samson.
I think I respect the church because, one, they also represent a section of Kenyans. We are told 80% of Kenyans are Christians. And I'm a very good Christian, so I normally give out 10% and tithes, and like my brother what I said. And I want to say that is the position. The position of the church is neither here nor there, because when you say that we need a leader of opposition, we already have a leader of minority who serves the same position. Number 2, these were the same questions that the Deputy President William Ruto did ask when we pushed for this constitution when he was in no, and they were valid then. And Kenyans did not see it coming, because the people who are pushing for the pure presidential model are the same people now that they are not in power. And therefore it is very unfortunate that I have already insisted that Salah Serema and my brother has said that we are represented. Therefore, when you say we want to create more positions, government positions or appointments, which are prime minister or deputy prime minister, it is not here nor there. What we should use is to allow this constitution to grow, so that at least the church can give they can give their opinion. But I'm not saying the constitution cannot be amended. They can, because we saw NASA, they tried with their stillborn called Okoa Kenya. And we realized later they were using it for relevance. But the point I'm trying to make is, despite the fact, that the church has raised its concern, it does not disqualify their opinion. What we are telling them is the country is moving forward. The Jubilee is trying to transform the country to a world-class economy here in East Africa and Central Africa and even Africa at large. And therefore we should allow the election. And I want to insist this, Anne, that election is a constitutional process. It is a legal process. It should not give us an agenda where when we go to an election as a country, we always say the country is divided. The reason that the church is pushing for this position is because they are saying the country is divided. Who walks around with a thermometer of division where it is in Nairobi CBD measures and says the country is divided? I've gone even in my own county. We have 43 tribes plus the extra one called Makonde. We now have 44 tribes in Nandi County, and they are living cohesively, harmoniously, and therefore I think the church are trying to firefight the situation that is not there by pushing for this amendment. Finally, on the issue of inclusivity, any government that comes in has been inclusive. I didn't know Rachel Mama, which happens to be our neighbor. We call her, the father, we used to call the father Kaliech, or the elephant locally. I didn't know that if Rachel Mama is appointed to the cabinet, I didn't know it does not bring inclusivity. It means that when Baba is in government, then all Luos are in government, which is very unfortunate, because we should be saying, if we appoint even Otoyo, if we appoint him to be the CS, some people will say, since Baba does not have the blessings of Baba, he will not be inclusive and Luos will not be part of the government.
And that's why, and I hear you, Samson, but I think there's a broader then discussion to be had about whether democracy as we have envisioned it or imported it is working for Africa. You're having Liberia even now, where we're just getting news that they're postponing their election as well. And throughout the continent, is this model of this thing called democracy working the way it should? Is there a need for us to reimagine it and recreate it as we want to?
What we should do is we ensure that, one of the key decision makers by the Lord Denning, he said, when you read foundations...
I'm impressed.
Some of my powers will include demerits. Demerits and sit in the corner, Senator. Goodness, make your point,
He argued in one of his submissions that when you transplant, and I think he was talking about Commonwealth practice of law, from England to Africa, he said there should be some form of domestication so that it meets some of the threshold. I think the problem we're having in Africa is because of ethnicity, tribalism, and some of these. And I want to finally, when you read the African states, I think the State of Africa by, I think, is it Michel Arong or Meratid, it says, when Kamal was removed from power, and this guy, what was he called, Mubarak, who he was removed the other day in Egypt, he says history will sentence this person to death. And I think these are some of the issues, and you can read it. It's quoted in some of these issues that the NCCK and even now they are part of NASA. Is that when they raise some of the, when history will be written in this country, some of the people will be hunged by history today.
I want to just,
I'm glad you
there's some things you've talked about. Come to order. Senator, you need to stop. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. There's something you're talking about. Gentlemen, you are all out of order.
Sorry.
Director, can we just kill their mics for fun? No, let's keep them on. Okay, I want to talk about political sensitivity and knowing when to negotiate, knowing when to cede ground, knowing when to accept proposals that you may not like in the greater interest, and specifically because of this issue of having, even though we have a democracy, we know how it works, we have the constitution, etc. I mean, is it working? And that's why I asked you about democracy. I want us to listen to what President Kenyatta had to say about political negotiation, and then we'll make our final submissions.
And because I will not be answering any questions, as I've said, this is an ongoing process. The people of Kenya have decided. The IEBC have made their announcement as to the verdict in a free and fair democratic election. There is still another process. So we shall wait for that process, and we shall wait for its outcome. So therefore, those who will want to ask me, are you going to engage in dialogue with so and so and so and so, let them first and foremost exhaust their constitutionally laid out processes. Let them go to court, let them do whatever they want. Nobody shall deny them of their constitutional right. Those issues we shall discuss later. As to my agenda going forward, I will discuss once the processes are over. I am not going to jump the gun.
Okay, so you hear a very measured president, if I may use the term, in terms of when do you talk, and perhaps if I can extend it, what are you even talking about? So in your final comments, all of you, there is a lot of people still calling for talk, dialogue. The two leaders can resolve this by sitting down, and be that as it may, both sides have given their reservations as to why they do not want to engage in those talks. Just your views about quelling tensions and finding a way of moving the country forward together, which cannot be done without talking. You're the naughty one, so we're not going to start with you, Senator Mutula.
You're deferring me.
Sue me.
There is a privilege. We have a privilege.
It is a privilege to defer me.
And I have listened to the president, and I have carefully understood what he was trying to say. He said he would not want to answer any questions, and he already knew the questions he was going to be asked, and he gave answers to them. That is what he did during the presidential debate time. He also gave himself questions and answered them. But that is not important for now. What is important, he said he wants to engage with any dialogue after he has been sworn in as president. So he's still waiting for the procedures to take place, those who are going to court to go to court, and then he can engage in any form of dialogue. I do not know what would be the agenda of such a dialogue, because the only reason why the opposition wanted dialogue was to have a free and fair election. And it was very easy to make Kenyans and the opposition believe that the election was free and fair. It would have been made in such a way that every voter can trace his vote right from the polling center through to the constituency tallying center, through to the national tallying center, and each time, as was promised by Chebukati, the turnout would be announced every 3 hours as submitted by the kids. I believe this election was not free and fair because there are some things which were so easy and were so necessary that the IEBC refused to do. It is the same IEBC that promised us and told us the kids can identify all Kenyans except 5,300. So what did that mean? It meant there's something they were running away from, which they successfully ran away from, and gave us some results which only them can testify about. So in the end, I don't think any dialogue would be necessary after the president has been sworn in and is moving on. I don't think the opposition would even participate in it.
Okay, your final thoughts, very briefly, sir.
Not
you, those are your final thoughts. Oliver.
I thought so.
Oliver, I don't have time for
You put a lot of energy.
I don't have time for another thought. My goodness, I can't wait to end this show. Oliver, please, 1 minute, sir.
I think we must reiterate and continue to press so that there is need for Kenyans to continuously talk. They talk. You cannot wake up in the morning and avoid to talk to your neighbor. I think that is what we say Kenyans are talking. So I find it hard to say that any kind of talk must be done or must be done at the national level. At each day of our lives, we talk. Every morning you wake up, you talk to your neighbor. And I want to put this in contrast with what happened in Kericho, Nandi, and Kisumu border. The leaders there talked. They didn't come to the national level to ask us we want to talk. It happened. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy when we talk about talking. What are we talking about? And then when you go to constitutionally mandated bodies, when it comes to the national dialogue and talking, we have Article 37, which gives us about the issue of picketing and everything. That is a form of people talking directly. We have the elections. When we conduct an election in this country, it is a dialogue between Kenyans, those of above 18 years who are registered as voters. And that is the dialogue we just had on 26th, whereby some part of the country felt that we are not into the talk. And then we have the parliament and everything. So I think when we come to the issue of talking, we have sufficient places, to do that. Avenues and constitutionally mandated bodies to talk.
Okay. Senator, you have 1 minute, please. Mutula?
After you've given the analysts more.
They have now left you with 1 minute.
I believe this is because of the handling of Francis, but you know, it's not. Let me say this. We have a bad culture. We have a bad culture because, and I'm glad my friend here mentioned that the governors in the border areas in Kisumu are talking. There's nothing wrong with talking, because when you talk, it doesn't mean you remove your soul or your heart or you change your opinion simply because you've had a chat. But what it does is that the minute supporters of both sides see people talking, they loosen up because they follow and they catch feelings on behalf of their, if I may use that word, on behalf of their...
Instead of oligarchy.
Yeah, oligarchy, yes. On behalf of their supporters.
Their leaders.
Of their leaders, yes. They think simply because people don't agree, then we can't talk. I can't talk to him because he's in Jubilee. But this country will one day have dialogue, a serious dialogue. We have refused to have dialogue. This is a nation. One day we are going to have dialogue. Whether it's after the petition, whether it's after the swearing in, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that the country must one day sit and wonder why we say, "O God of all creation, bless this land and nation." Not bless the Kambas or Kikuyus or Kalins. So, and lastly to say that when we wanted to resolve the electoral crisis in the country, we sat down in Windsor and we talked. And Moses Kuria was there, Mothame was there, I was there, and Junet Mohammed. You can still find these people and we can still have dialogue about this nation. It's not new.
Right. Okay, Samson, you have a minute, please.
Thank you. I think finally I want to say this is the first time in history of this country that Raila Odinga will not complain that his elections were stolen. I need, as a country, we need to come together and ensure we move forward. I want to call for the people of Nandi, Kericho and Kisumu to maintain peace. As leaders, we have initiated process of engaging and ensuring that peace and normalcy returns across the border. And finally, I want to call upon the President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto that now that they have mandates and they say the voice of the people is the voice of God, I want them to ask them to stamp their authority as mandate provided by the Constitution and ensure that we continue transforming this country into going forward. And anybody, as Jubilee, we will not allow any narrative that builds that we have an Osubakate government. Thank you very much.
And I want to thank my guests, Samson Cherargei, the Nandi Senator, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., Senator Makueni, who's getting a demerit, Joyo Owiti is a political analyst, and Oliver Kipchumba, a political analyst, for laughing for 3 hours. Thanks for watching. I'm Anne Kiguta. We leave you now with the Election Observation Group, which is issuing their press statement, their position on the repeat presidential poll. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.
How long observers